Okay, so now that Parasyte the Maxim is finished airing and the series is complete, I basically want to do a review of it and give you guys my final thoughts on it, because I was supposed to be reviewing episode by episode every week, but that didn't really work out because I'm just not an episode reviewer. I don't do reviews of episodes, standalone like that, so I'd just rather talk about the entire series as a whole and basically compare it to the manga adaptation, well, the original source material, in fact, because this is in fact the adaptation. I reviewed the Parasyte manga, quite a while ago now. I think over a year ago. There'll be a link in this video. You can probably see it around here or around here. If you want to check that review out first. As is always standard, there's never any spoilers in my reviews, so you can feel confident. If you want to get into this series, then by all means check out that previous review. That'll give you an idea as to what it's about. But this is about the anime and how I genuinely feel about how Madhouse, which is the animation studio that adapted it, brought it to life. On the big screen. Well, not the big screen, just general household screens. And in my case, Crunchyroll. Okay, so yeah, I think all around Madhouse did a good job of it. The animation was fluid, as is it's pretty standard for Madhouse shows. I've seen quite a few Madhouse shows now, and they always aim to please and they always do the job correctly. I've got a few gripes with the series overall. As the anime, I guess towards in the sort of second half, it confirmed to me that I didn't really like the ending as much as I did when I was reading it. And I guess that's just kind of because generally over time my tastes have changed. I won't reveal exactly why I didn't really like the ending. I just thought it was a little bit anticlimactic to what how it was portrayed in the manga, and it became a little bit too preachy. The artist or the author, I don't know, he just tried to put his own spin and basically putting his own thoughts on the purpose of humanity and like human beings' purpose in, I guess, the food chain on the earth. And I just thought it was a bit too preachy, but the ending was amazing. Same way. So basically, anybody who hasn't seen this anime or read the manga, it's basically about worm-like creatures that appear on Earth. And these worm-like creatures, in order to survive, they need to take over a living host, take over the head, take over the brain, become the nerve central for the entire body, and basically, exist that way. That their sole directive is to survive. And the main character, Shinichi Izumi, his parasite unsuccessfully takes over his body because the parasites usually take over the head. Shinichi's parasite takes over his arm because Shinichi was listening to music, so he had headphones on, and basically he matures in his arm, and basically two beings, two entities, two consciousnesses exist within the one body. So because the majority of the parasites that exist, successfully manage to take over a human host and take over the head, basically Shinichi and Migi, which is what he names his parasite, end up in a really strange situation because they're aware of each other, they know of each other's powers and weaknesses, and they both see each other as a threat. Shinichi sees Migi as nothing but a brainless monster, just kin to all the other parasites that are going around feeding off humans, because that's what the parasites do. If they take over a human host, then they will feed off of the actual kind of the body that have taken over. Like, for example, if you take over a human, you'll want to feed off humans. If you take over a dog, you will want to feed on other dogs, things like that. And there's a few cases. Well, there's one case earlier on in the series where we see a parasite that's is basically considered unsuccessful because he's taken over a dog, and because a dog is I guess inferior in intelligence and brain capacity to a human, he's seen as a failure. But because obviously he's a dog, he has to feed on other dogs as well, which is a pretty it's a pretty interesting spin on basically parasite physiology. But basically Shinichi and Migi form an uneasy alliance because Shinichi, being human and with the morals that he has, he sees the parasites as monsters and thinks that they need to be wiped out. So there's this constant clash between Migi wanting to survive and Shinichi wanting to save the human race, and eventually they learn to coexist, and basically they turn a weakness into a strength by basically learning to team up together in order to combat other parasites. And because of their unnatural situation, you know, they manage to have an edge over the other parasites because, you know, they can basically play off of each other's strengths. You know, Migi is very intelligent. Shinichi is, you know, is dexterous and passionate. And you know, they both have their own strengths and weaknesses. Essentially, you know, they both either get along or, you know, they clash. You know, they're always butting heads, you know, so to speak, I guess, or butting head and arm. I don't know, but it is a really interesting story. The dynamics between the two characters, you know, learning to coexist with each other, and Shinichi trying to deal with the fact that he wants to save the human race, but he needs to keep Migi a secret, because if Migi, you know, if it's known that you know, a parasite exists within his arm, then, you know, he'll be subject to human experimentation. This will essentially compromise Migi's, you know, survival, which is something that he doesn't want to do. So Migi and Shinichi are constantly on this, you know, uneasy balance between, you know, friend and foe, because, you know, Migi is constantly threatening Shinichi, saying, you know, if you tell anybody about me, if you tell the authorities about me, I'm going to kill your family. So Shinichi is basically a prisoner in his own body. He's essentially being blackmailed by something that doesn't necessarily have evil intent. Migi or any of the parasites don't have any evil intent, they don't have any good intent, they're just completely neutral, they're just creatures with directives. And this is something that's really played upon in this series. There's no real villains or heroes. They're just normal people trying to live normal daily lives, and, you know, you have an alien third party entered into the mix, and it's just, you know, how that affects normal people, and it's just brilliantly told. You know, the story generally is really good. The action is also really good, but you also have, you know, melodrama used in the right way. You know, there's a lot of dramatic elements and a lot of tragic elements in this series, which could, you know, be deemed, I guess, far-fetched and unrealistic. Like, for example, you know, parasites basically attacking schools, you know, things like that. You know, things that you would normally deem far-fetched, but they played off and basically portrayed very well in this series. You know, to the point where you could feel like if that was the actual situation, if this happened in a real-life setting, then this is probably how it would play out. In terms of comparisons to the manga, the anime opted out for, you know, excluding some minor parts, you know, in the anime from the manga. Nothing that directly affects the story, but things that basically serve to, I guess, you know, bring context to the mindset of a parasite. Like, for example, there's a scene in the manga where randomly a lion escaped from a zoo, and the lion is basically walking around in public, feasting off of people. You know, people are screaming and scared, but the lion eventually comes across a parasite, which instinctively the lion sees that the parasite is different to the other animals that he's feasting on, aka humans. And we get to see basically the mindset of the lion kind of coming to terms with this creature that I'm looking at is different, this parasite. He doesn't know that it's parasite, he just knows that it's different, because obviously it's told from an animal's perspective. I reckon it would have been very difficult to animate that and put that into words, because you can't really give a lion a human voice. You know, that would have come across as very unrealistic. But the way it's done in the manga, it's almost like the thoughts are instinctual, and that's something that I would have liked to have seen, or at least, you know, I would have liked to have seen Madhouse try and handle that in the anime. But I also see why they took it out. You know, I thought it was a fair move that they, you know, that they excluded that from the anime. Also, earlier on in the series as well, there's a scene where Shinichi fights a load of bullies in like a bathroom. You know, I would have liked to have seen that in the anime as well, because that's really the first time that you get to see Shinichi, you know, basically, you know, show his powers, you know, show his, you know, newly formed abilities from you know, having a parasite enter into his body. And I guess it didn't really have that much of an impact, you know, on the series overall, on the anime overall, but initially you could see that, you know, that was missing, and they opted out instead for Shinichi running in front of a car and saving a little girl, which I would have preferred the bathroom scene over that, because Shinichi isn't necessarily the hero. He does heroic things and he does have the heroic mindset, but he's a hero with human abilities, essentially. You know, he grows over time, but initially he's just a normal kid who's not too special. You know, he's not the chosen one, I guess you could say. And you see this in how he develops, because he develops not to become a hero serving, you know, humanity. He's just a young boy struggling with his, you know, really unusual situation. And you know, he comes across as very realistic in that sense. So, you know, I do really highly recommend the anime. But you know, like I said, the one gripe with me is that you know, the ending for the anime adaptation did come across as quite anticlimactic. I think it was handled a lot better in the manga. I guess you could say in the manga and the anime, they kind of copied it panel for panel, but there's just something about reading it in the manga that makes it seem more genuine, and you know, it brings more closure to the story. In the anime, it just, I don't know where it was exactly, whether it was the cinematography or you know, the voice acting, or just the fact that it was animated generally. Maybe it just didn't come across as, you know, maybe it's just not something that would come across well animated anyway. As you know, the final scenes in you know, the manga are more of a monologue, like the author's monologue. Whereas in the anime, it's quite clear that it's Shinichi's monologue, and maybe that's, you know, maybe that's the discrepancy there. Maybe that's my, you know, my gripe with it. But overall, it kind of made me not necessarily dislike the ending, but it almost, I guess, it made me realise that the ending wasn't as fantastic and perfect as I would have deemed it. It's a great ending, don't get me wrong, and obviously I'm not going to reveal it for anybody who hasn't seen the anime. For those who have, then obviously you know what I'm talking about. But I just think it could have been handled a little bit better. How, you know, I don't really know, as I'm not a writer, you know, I'm not a director, so you know, I'm not really at liberty to say, or you know, any position to judge, you know, because overall it was extremely entertaining, and you know, I would still highly recommend it. As for a rating, I don't really necessarily want to give a rating. You know, obviously you've seen in my past few videos, and I've been thinking about implementing a rating system, but I don't know, I'm kind of sliding against that now. I'd rather just give you my full and honest opinion rather than, you know, mathematically calculating a rating and putting it on a scale, because I mostly rate things over my personal enjoyment, you know, basically putting that heavily into consideration. So I would just highly recommend watching Parasyte the Maxim, but I would recommend reading the manga over watching the anime. So that's it for now. I've been ArchAngel Manga. This has been my review of Parasyte the Maxim. If you want to check out the manga's back in print by Kodansha. And if you want to buy that manga, you can check out my book depository affiliate link below, where you can buy cheap manga with free worldwide shipping. You know, book depository is a really good site. So if you would click on the link, I get commission off every sale made off of that link, and it would help me out greatly. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.